The Sheathipede-class shuttle is one of the most iconic ships of the Clone Wars era. Variants of it have appeared in 3 films, dozens of episodes of television, 2 theme parks, and it is even slated to return in the upcoming Ahsoka series. It has a long and interesting history spanning over half a dozen variants and spin-offs. Stay tuned to learn more about this diminutive craft. I am Joey from Radio Free Coruscant, and this is Unsheathing the Sheathipede. Overview and design. First appearing in The Phantom Menace, the Sheathipede-class transport shuttle was a shuttle family built by Heor Chal Engineering, a member of the Trade Federation. It was primarily used as a short-range shuttle to ferry Neimoidians between their ships and the ground or between 2 ships, but it was equipped with a hyperdrive for longer flights as well. It was built to resemble a Neimoidian soldier beetle, with an insectoid shape and a large vertical fin containing its shield generators and sensor package. It also had a cluster of tall antennae in front of the fin, 4 pincer-like landing legs that either folded up into or up against its narrow lower hull, depending on the variant, and 1 to 3 headlights on the nose. Speaking of the landing legs, the Neimoidians were so classist and cowardly that the landing legs were designed so that they were only capable of landing on a hard, smooth surface. This made it so that the ship was entirely incapable of landing anywhere without a proper landing pad, giving them an excuse not to go visit Trade Federation mines, farms, and other working-class locations. The ship's hull was divided into 3 distinct segments, with the cockpit and antenna cluster in the front and the vertical fin in the rear. It was originally designed for the maximum level of luxury and comfort possible in a ship of its size, though later models would become progressively more utilitarian. In real life, the Sheathipede was created by ILM model makers Larry Tan and Adam Savage of Mythbusters fame. Variants, specifications, and history. There have been several variants of the Sheathipede over the course of galactic history. We will examine them each in chronological order. The original Sheathipede entered service shortly before 32 ABY. It was commonly seen on Trade Federation spacecraft, such as those that participated in the Battle of Naboo, where Viceroy Newt Gunray took one to Naboo's surface to survey his ill-gotten planet. It measured 14.4 meters long, 8 meters wide, and about 11 meters tall. It was unarmed and poorly armored, and shielded. The Sheathipede had a top atmospheric speed of 880 kilometers per hour, or 547 miles per hour, and had a very fast Class 1 hyperdrive. It required a pilot, co-pilot, and optional comms operator and flight engineer, who all sat in the narrow cockpit, and it could carry 8 passengers or 150 tons of cargo in the rear compartment. Automated Sheathipede. At some point in the next 10 years, Heor Chal introduced a new model of this ship called the Automated Sheathipede. This ship was almost identical to the original Sheathipede, but it included an onboard droid brain comparable to an astromech droid that could pilot the ship along simple flight plans. This enabled Heor Chal to remove the cockpit and extend the passenger cabin, giving it an additional 4 seats. Armed Sheathipede, or Sheathipede 2. After the outbreak of the Clone Wars, the Confederacy of Independent Systems commissioned many Sheathipedes of both variants, but quickly found that they needed a more durable shuttle. While the Sheathipede was never deliberately sent into battle, it was frequently used to escape them, and was often ambushed by Republic forces while on routine flights as well. As such, the Confederacy needed a more combat-ready Sheathipede, and Heor Chal delivered. Officially, this shuttle was known as the Armed Sheathipede, though it has enough differences that I prefer to call it the Sheathipede 2. The Sheathipede 2 had a much rounder nose and new cockpit canopy that was widened to allow a gunner to sit next to the pilot, and a slightly wider lower hull to accommodate thicker armor and just a bit more storage capacity. The rear third of the ship was widened to accommodate 2 laser cannons in the sides, with a third added to the top of the fin for which the antennae had to be shortened. The interior was stripped of its luxurious strappings, either to offset the cost of these modifications or simply because they were no longer necessary. It was commonly used by high-ranking Separatist officers, but it was being used for military purposes, not to impress potential clients. Sheathipede-class Type B shuttle. Further leaning into the utility of this ship, Hayward-Chall Engineering also introduced the Sheathipede-class Type B shuttle. The Type B was a variant of the Sheathipede-2 that featured an extended middle section that increased the ship's length to about 22 meters. The front and rear segments of the hull were identical to those of the Sheathipede-2, though it was only armed with the fin-mounted center cannon. The Type B was almost exclusively used for light cargo duty, though it was also used for covert operations, such as a mission where a team of bounty hunters led by Cad Bane attempted to kidnap Chancellor Palpatine. A stolen shuttle was also used by a Jedi strike team to rescue Jedi General Even Piell from the infamous Separatist prison, the Citadel. Sheathipede-3-class shuttle. Sometime shortly before the end of the war, an updated version of the Sheathipede was produced, which I will call the Sheathipede-3. The Sheathipede-3 had an even wider, almost boat-like lower hull, a modernized and better armored cockpit, and updated systems. It dropped the weapons and 2 of the 3 headlights, and the hull was smoothed out into an almost egg-like shape. It would have been the definitive Sheathipede, but it only entered service a few weeks before the end of the war and the collapse of the Confederacy, and as such only a few dozen were built. 3 of these shuttles were found on a crashed DH Omni-class support craft by the crew of the Ghost, a team of rebels known as the Spectre Cell. 1 shuttle was destroyed in their escape, 1 shuttle was taken by former Separatist General Kalani, and the remaining shuttle was taken by the Spectres to use as their auxiliary shuttle for the Ghost to replace the destroyed Phantom. Sabine Wren modified the shuttle to slot into the Ghost's docking bay, added 2 forward and 1 rear laser cannons, significantly shortened the vertical fin, and painted it to match the Ghost. Sheathipede-4-class shuttle. At some point between the collapse of the Confederacy and 34 ABY, Hayward-Chall Engineering was acquired by Sinar Fleet Systems, who resumed production of the Sheathipede under the brand name Sinar-Chall. It is unknown at what point the Sheathipede re-entered production, or if the Sheathipede-3 was the model that did, but eventually an as-yet final model of the ship was produced, the Sheathipede-4. It was very similar to the Sheathipede-3, but the aft segment was lengthened, 2 small wings were added to the middle section, and the cockpit canopy was enlarged and redesigned to resemble the original Sheathipede from roughly 60 years prior. Interestingly, the engineers at Sinar-Chall must have been fans of the Spectre Cell, because the Sheathipede-4 also featured the forward lasers and shortened fin of Sabine Wren's Phantom II. The Sheathipede-4's fin had a lower forward slope than Sabine's modification did, but it was nearly identical in most other respects. 1 such shuttle was used by the Neimoidian gangster Hallion Nark, who secretly worked with the First Order. Maxillipede. In addition to these 6 variants of the Sheathipede, there were also at least 2 spin-off craft. One was the Maxillipede shuttle from the Clone Wars era. It was also 14.4 meters long, but its hull was larger to accommodate more passengers. It had 2 vertical fins, which were taller than that of the Sheathipede. It was not a commonly used ship. Utilipede transport. The other spin-off was the later Sinar-Chall Utilipede transport. This was an uncommon but popular cargo vessel built with the same basic shape and proportions of the Sheathipede. It was slightly larger than the shuttle, at around 20 meters long. It was much more boxy and angular, and featured a large cutout in the hull where 3 cargo containers could be carried and lifted or lowered with winches. I would assume that there was also a model that could carry cargo internally like other super light freighters. One such transport was used by Chef Strano Tuggs as a food truck of sorts, hosting his mobile kitchen called Tuggs Grub, which could commonly be found on Batuu in Disney's Galaxy's Edge. Another Utilipede can be spotted in the trailer for the upcoming game Star Wars Outlaws, implying that the Heor Chal and Sienar merger happened early in the Imperial era. As you can see, the Sheathipede has a long and storied history spanning the better part of 70 years. It's one of the coolest little shuttle designs in Star Wars, and I hope you enjoyed learning about it as much as I enjoyed talking about it. If you did, please subscribe and tell me which version of the ship is your favorite in the comments, or what topic you'd like me to cover next. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to go check out this planet that I just blockaded. I'll see you later.